Hello and welcome to the Results with Ronnie podcast series. I am Ronnie Walker, your master coach of exceptional relationships and sex. We're on episode 20. But before we get started, I want you to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button to keep you updated on the latest episodes that drop, and also share with friends and family and all those that you feel that could benefit if you feel that what I am sharing with you brings value. So today's topic is talking about, is sex important while dating? Well, that depends on who you ask. For some it is, and of course for some it isn't. So why is it that there are so people really on the extremes when it comes to that? And I'm sure some of the answers you have known or may have spoken about in conversations that you've had with friends, family, and even with your significant other. Some of you have stories that may have concerned decisions that you wish you wouldn't have taken action on, one way or the other. But I spoke to well over 100 people concerning this question just for the sake of this podcast. And of course, I could have gotten extremely nerdy and shared a whole bunch of numbers for those studies that have been done. I think the latest study that I was able to read was 2018. And it would appear that as much sex has been shown out here, be it music, be it movies, porn, etc., there seems to be this trend of people not having as much sex as you would think. In fact, the last study I read were married couples. And that's interesting. Yet at the same time, you can understand when now we're in a time when you have two family households, children, stress, all the things that are going on. We're also now in a season where we're dealing with a pandemic, and that added a whole nother dimension to sex. And this is a case where you're dating as well as those that are married. Now, a number of the reasons that people feel that sex isn't that important is because in the past relationships that they had while dating, they find that once sex is involved, they didn't make the best or sound decisions concerning that. And they ended up in a relationship longer than they felt they should have. But then again, they love the sex. But as we know, a strong, healthy, foundational relationship really can't survive on just sex, even if it's exceptional sex. Now others, as I'm sure many of you know, don't want to take the chance of getting pregnant. Or at least while dating. That is something they figure if they have children in their future, they want a ring first. They want to be married. And although there's birth control that is out there, many don't want to take the chance. Because what I did discover in my phone calls, and even just in my journey in life, there are those who knew that they had protection and they were on point with it, and the woman still ended up pregnant. So, for best case, they figured, no, sex is not in the equation. Now, of course, others do it for religious reasons. They didn't start this way now, and some did. Some were raised from their youth to not have sex. And yes, believe it or not, I did talk to some that said they were virgins. And that sex is not in the equation while dating. This is something they were only going to do once they're married. Now others or having sex in previous relationships, but for a number of reasons. One being they didn't make the best decisions. They decided that again they were going to hold off on sex until marriage came into play. So they're born again, and they realized that they were going to follow the word of God, and they were not going to have sex while dating. Others have just simply lost the desire. Now, while some have not made any efforts to further explore why that is the case, there are others that realize that this is something they did enjoy and yet can't figure out what happened that they no longer have a desire for sex. And for others, trauma played a part. Just the mere thought of sex, intercourse of any sort, just triggers emotions that is not conducive to their well-being and to the relationship. Now, of course, hopefully, as I wish them well in finding, to deal with that, to seek therapy. Sex, from my own personal opinion and experience, is a beautiful, beautiful thing. With someone you feel is the right person, it's incredible, mind-blowing. It takes your body to the limit, your mind to the limit that many other experiences can't. It's often said that sex is not something you do, but a place you go. A place you go with another person. You escape from the world. It's just you and your significant other. Now, mind you, there are those who have sex just for the pure pleasure of it. There's a diminished amount of emotional invested in this situation, entanglement, or whatever you choose to call it. But this is something that they really truly believe that they're in the right space when it comes to sex. Some would argue that it's much better not to have the emotion tied to sex. And then you'll have others that will argue that without it, you really aren't having good sex. Now, mind you, there are those who will tell you that their sexual experiences has not been the best. And then dig deeper. Some were not really taught that. They didn't get the birds and the bees talk, for those of you who know what I mean, from their parents. And then when doing so, it was pretty awkward and nervous. Being in a partnership with someone who's more experienced than them. And if that person is very selfish in nature, and they're only looking out for their sexual satisfaction, then that leaves you out. And believe it or not, that happens more times than you know. Coming from both the male side and the female side. I know many believe that selfish sex is something that only men are guilty of. And I can assure you that there are women out there that are guilty of the same act. And some have even gone so far as to admit that. So it's interesting, and really, really interesting when you're having these conversations. So, why does someone believe that sex is important? Well, for others, it provides a closeness. It provides something that consummates the relationship. Now, for others, that only happens once you've exchanged wedding vows. It's incredible to hear the conversations of others as they talk about sex. I even found it fascinating for the phone calls that I made to many people, and as they shared their positive views as well as their negative views of sex and experiences, it is fascinating. I mean, I have to say, to have someone tell you the days of sneaking off to meet someone, those journeys, and to hear the tonality of their voice as they talk about those days. I found that to be pretty powerful. Now remember, for others, they just love the expression. They love the feeling of euphoria that intercourse brings. It could be just in terms of masturbation, penetration, oral, the different form, the fetishes, all that what they feel the body's there to explore. For others, it's a great stress reliever. I believe that an orgasm a day keeps the stress away. So you speak of times where masturbation is a must in the morning. It helps them prepare for the day ahead because they know that the day is going to bring forth its share of challenges. Now, while that may not be the most positive outlook of just planning to know that the day is going to be stressful, there's still many that says, you know what, Ron, just in case, I'm going to make sure that this is something that I need to do and take the edge off in the morning as I prepare for the day. And others, in addition to, or in place of the morning, they wait until the evening. Music playing, having a glass of wine, a favorite beverage, and just before going to sleep, they master their body, reach an orgasm, and drift off into what they say is a nice, deep, relaxing sleep. So who's right, who's wrong? Well, I'll leave that up to you. So now we have people that practice celibacy. But even as I looked into the definition and I asked people what they felt celibacy was for them, that practice, the answers still vary. Now, celibacy in its definition is abstaining from marriage and sex. And the reason I said, well, celibate from marriage is, yes, well, because there is marriage and sex. Now, whether it's a lot or little, or a quote-unquote safe amount, whatever that may mean, intercourse does come into play. And then you have abstinence. And pretty much when you talk about abstinence, this is something that it doesn't just pertain to sex, although it's so connected to sex. Abstinent, you can be abstinent from, practice abstinence away from drugs, alcohol, things that people feel that is addictive and damaging in their life. So they abstain from that. But here's the thing that I also found interesting. I often asked those who are practicing celibacy and not wanting to have sex while dating, do they make that a prerequisite with the person they're dating? In other words, if you are not interested in having sex during your dating and courtship, are you expecting the other person to be of the same mindset? So your practice celibacy their practice celibacy and you make that known on the first date? Or is this something that you put on your dating profile if you're going on online dating? Some do, some don't. Now, mind you, I would not encourage anyone to go dating or on dates with someone they're not attracted to, even sexually. I mean, I just don't see the sense in that. But then again, this is just Ron's opinion. And of course, we know looks for everything. But what happens when you go on those vacations together and you're looking at him or her coming out of the shower in just a towel, or getting ready for bed, or sleeping in the same bed? Temptation is always there. It's a part of life. We just need to accept that. But think about that in a space when you don't want to have sex before marriage. Now, when there's no one in your life, well, for many people that's easy. You live by yourself, you wake up by yourself, you go to sleep by yourself. But now add another individual in your life, and it adds a whole nother dynamic to this. Because now you're seeing someone just besides you, sharing a shower, kissing. And yes, kissing does lead to sex. Now, there are those who can keep it at that. But again, I ask you, if you're practicing celibacy, are you making sure the person you're dating is practicing celibacy as well? Or it doesn't matter to you? Now, some would argue that that's pretty selfish, because now you're asking this person to switch gears into a space they may not be prepared for. They're used to that. So why add the challenge onto them for something maybe that you've been rehearsed and practiced for years? Wouldn't it just be easier to find someone who's practicing celibacy as well? And so the pushback is, well, Ron, I don't control who I'm attracted to, and we're attracted to each other, and as long as you're honest with each other and knowing how challenging it's going to be, well, then more power to you. But I know the journey is hard enough. When you're full blown and past through 3-4 relationships, you're used to having sex, and then you meet someone and you're now going cold turkey. Knowing the urges of the body, knowing how much a touch, a kiss could ignite a fire inside a man or woman that many will find hard to control. So it's a challenge. But it also challenges that you must be honest with yourself as well as honest with the other person that you are dating. Now, many are successful at it. They stayed celibate, got married, and then on a honeymoon had much to catch up on. Although, funny enough, you'd be surprised at how many people don't have sex in their honeymoon. But that's a whole nother story. We'll talk about that in another podcast. Others believe in something called outer course as opposed to intercourse. And this is like dry humping or anything that has nothing to do with penetration, just purely masturbation. So what some couples do is they masturbate each other. Others believe in strictly oral, and as long as it's not penetration, it's not sex. Others don't even kiss or hold hands for any extended period of time. Again, the rules vary, and trust me, I've heard them all. Whatever a person, or a couple in this case, feels is working for them, then again, who are you, who are I to say is wrong? So if sex is important to you, then make that known. I encourage you to. Don't try to play your desires because someone else feels that it's not. Because there are many couples that are now married that are having challenges in the bedroom because one has desires more than the other. Now, mind you, so many things can happen that will make that happen. One being stress, others menopause, or just overall challenges in a relationship itself. Or some can still feel that they have the urge, they're still sexually attracted to their partners, and other, it greatly diminishes the desire for the other person. But in the world of dating, again, make that known. Now, of course, if you are of the religious space and you don't believe in sex before marriage, well, then make that known as well. But to make it easier on yourself and the other person, maybe limit yourself to only dating those who are practicing like you. Or you may find yourself in a situation that you didn't intend on. So is dating important? Or is sex important while dating? Again, that's up to you. That's up to the other person. Communication, conversation, as early as possible is key. Also make it known or clear at what point in the dating you feel comfortable about having the conversations and sex. Now for some, they want to get that part of it out of the way immediately. Others want to wait a little while. They want to get to know him or her. Feel him out. Some don't want to feel pressured into having a conversation. But sometimes what forces it is the actions of the man or the woman. So again, make it easier on yourself, make it easier in your dating journey to know if sex is important to you, and making sure that you communicate that to the person you're dating as soon as possible. This way there are no surprises. After 3, 4, 5 dates, and the other person is wondering, when's the big day? Or for those who want to wait 90 days, whatever your rules are or whatever the rules of that person is. Like everything else, this is something that you definitely want to make sure that you own up to within yourself, and making sure that you share that with the person you're courting or the person that is courting you. Well, this is going to be part 1. I am going to include part 2, but it won't be the next podcast. This is something that I'm going to delve a little deeper because, again, there are other questions that I wanted to ask, but because I had so many people that I was asking just the basics and the stories that I was hearing was long, I decided that I would break this up into 2 parts. So I thank you for tuning in and listening. My name is Ronnie Walker, Master Coach of Exceptional Relationships and Sex. And don't forget, MrRelationshipMan.com for the podcast. Subscribe and share. If you're looking for consults and coaching, you can go to resultswithronnie.com and send your name. Also, if you have any questions, comments concerning this podcast and the podcast before, you can reach me at Ronnie at resultswithronnie.com. That's Ronnie at resultswithronnie.com. I also have a Patreon page, and you can reach out to me on Instagram at official Ronnie Walker. Again, I thank you for listening in. Enjoy your dating life, your sex life, and your marriage. Until again, I'll talk to you next time.